to the podcast version of 32 Bar Cut, the show, a series for performers, about performers, made by performers. Every week, we give audition advice, share personal experiences, and sit down with fellow colleagues in the performing arts to chat about their life in the industry. If you are hearing this message, you are not currently a subscriber and will only be hearing the first half of the podcast. If you would like to hear the full interview, including the curtain call series, you'll want to head over to 32barcut.com, where you can find a link to our Patreon page. There you will have exclusive access to the entire video and private RSS podcast feed, as well as other subscriber-only content. Thanks for listening. Without further ado, on to the show.
You may have seen her flipping her fins in the national tour of the Little Mermaid or singing her heart out as Kim in Miss Saigon. But today she is sitting down with us to talk about her life as a performer. Welcome to the show, Diana Huey.
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you for having me.
I am so excited to have you here. So excited.
That was an amazing intro.
Thank you.
That was amazing.
Austin wrote that, and it's our little way of introducing everybody into the show and the life of theater, if you will.
It's perfect. It's perfect. That's amazing.
Thank you. So, my first question, I hope it doesn't sound too loaded, but I really do mean it. How are you? How are you doing? How are you navigating this new way of living life off of the stage?
All things considered, I am doing well. I can't complain. As long as I always said from the very beginning of all of this craziness was as long as my family is okay and, we can keep a roof over our heads and still eat food and, get through this. That's all I ask for the people I love to be safe and knock on wood. So far, that's, they've been good. My parents have just gotten vaccinated. My dad got a second shot. My mom's getting her second shot tomorrow. So I'm like feeling a little better. But it's actually been this really great silver lining. My boyfriend is a musician and we never get to see each other. We've been together for about 7 years, and we last year it just started becoming a joke because we would spend literally 24 hours together before someone else had to bounce. A year ago, last week or something, it was like, oh, okay, he picked me up from this show at the airport. So he picked me up at at LaGuardia at this time. And then 24 hours and 1 minute later, I dropped him off at JFK the next day. And we were like, bye. And that happened so often that we were like, how do we keep booking gigs that there is 1 to maybe 3 days if we're lucky that we're together. So suddenly we just spent almost an entire year together every day. And it's been like really amazing. Lots of cooking, lots of eating. When we get back to work, I'm just going to have to really get on a health kick. And plant babies galore. I've been adopting a lot of plants. So, all things considered, I'm happy, and I've gotten to meet people like you on amazing things like this and other, the conversation panel that we were on. There's been a lot of these amazing panels and creative ways that people are making creation happen. And I've felt very lucky to be included in a lot of these projects. And so I've still felt like I've been working and doing things and meeting people and collaborating. So yeah, I'm doing well, all things considered. And we're getting to the final stretch. I you can see the light at the end of the tunnel now. So fingers crossed.
Definitely, with the few vaccines that we have available now, I can see the light at the end of the tunnel as well. And I'm so glad to hear that your family's okay, because that is always a concern. You never know what someone's situation is. So I'm really glad to hear that. And it's funny that you talk about not having time with your boyfriend, because I felt the same way with Austin and I. there were so many years where he would be on tour and I'd be at home, or I would be on tour and he would be home, or we would both be on tour. And we just didn't really get a chance to settle in and spend time together. And we kept deciding, okay, this is the year where we will spend time together. But
Yeah.
then one of us would book something amazing and you can't say no.
You
And
can't say no. I know. It's such a double-edged sword because you want, and I'm so grateful that my boyfriend is so supportive, and I am of his career as well. Like, he spent half the year in Europe with his band Brass Against last year, just touring Europe. And, I'm like, I want that for you. I want your music to be heard. I want you to get to do these things that we as artists want to do. But man, I miss you. But we've also gotten really good at making long distance work. We talk every day. You always, whoever's going to bed first always at least sends a text message to say, I'm going to bed, so that the other person can, say goodnight. But it's been so nice to, get to spend time with your partner this year. And, I feel horrible for the people where it's gone the opposite way. So I'm, again, very grateful that it wasn't we spent a year together and now I think I don't want to do this anymore. So I was like, great, this is a perfect test of spending a lot of consolidated time together in an apartment in New York City.
absolutely. It's always a great thing when you discover that you actually do like each other.
I know. He's actually out at a studio today doing in-person recording stuff. And we were like, okay, well, bye. I'll miss you. Like, what? And, he had just little various gigs. If we spend, just a little bit of time apart now, we're like, oh, it's so quiet. I don't know what to do with myself. I guess I'll just watch some TV or something. It's weird. I'm like, I'm suddenly very dependent on your company. I'm so glad that I still love it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad to hear that. Our we have a dog, Bella.
Oh.
And she has become very attached during this time. And
oh my gosh.
I've gotten a couple of gigs that I've had to do outside of the house. And Austin will send me photos of her waiting by the door. And it's horrible because I know I'm not going to be back for 4 hours or something, but she's
4 hours. You're like, I used to be gone for 4 months at a time. And now it's 4 hours and we're like, I don't know what to do with myself. That's so fun. It's so real though. It's going to be very strange going back to work. I'm very excited for it. Obviously, we're all very excited to get to go back to work, but I feel like my energy level too, just doing one thing a day. If I do one thing a day, I'm like, ooh, that was a hard 1 hour Zoom call. What? I'm exhausted. And I'm like, what is this? How are we going to do this? I'm not sure, but we'll find out. I think everyone's going to be.
You won't be alone. And that'll be the thing, is that we can all come together and talk about, oh my God, are you exhausted? Because I've been going to bed at 10:30. And what's going to happen now?
Who am I? I'll get tired so early and I'm like, a year ago, this was, the middle of Act 1. What am I doing? I can't be tired. We're in intermission. We still have an act to go. How? Yeah, it's going to be an interesting adjustment period to shift back. But I think it's a challenge. Everyone's like, bring it on. I'm ready. I'm ready to drink all the coffee in the world.
Definitely. We're adaptable. That's why we do what we do.
Exactly.
So I really want to chat about your time with The Little Mermaid for a few reasons. I want to chat about it just because it's amazing. Congratulations to you for booking that tour and getting to go around the country as Little Mermaid. Also, it doesn't look like the easiest of shows. So kudos to you for pulling that off, being in the air all the time and just all the things. I imagine that your core must have been the most solid
my
of
gosh,
life.
Yes. I was like, by the end of that year, I was like, I have abs. I'm really strong now. And just the strength, and then 3 days after tour was done, it was just and I was like, really? Really? It just softened back up to a nice, healthy, happy tummy. And I was like, cool. That went quickly. 3 days later, I was like, these back to my old clothes. But it was definitely a very aerobic show with the flying. Glenn Cassell, who was the director, got hired to sort of figure out why The Little Mermaid on Broadway didn't do as well as they wanted it to, as like something like The Lion King, which is obviously still very successful. And they're like, why didn't Mermaid have that same sort of thing? So they used him to sort of rework it. He also worked on Hunchback. He's like Disney's fix-it guy. And he was like, well, it's not as magical as you would want The Little Mermaid to be. You have, half the show takes place underwater. We can do so much more than, in the Broadway one, they were skating, which still it looked very cool and she was gliding and swimming. But he was like, I want to turn the whole space into the deep sea because she lives under the sea. So they added the Foy system and we were flying. And yeah, it was a very intense exercise year. It was fun though, and like all of the videos online, I just cringe whenever I see them. Like if someone tags me in something, I see what it is and I can't watch it anymore. It was all during tech at the beginning of the process, so people are like, oh, she sounds so labored, and I was like, I was labored. We were in tech and I was learning how to fly and hang from my stomach, and like to swim across the stage you have to then use your core to, because you're just sitting in a harness. So then to swim sideways, you have to like push yourself down and hold yourself there as it's dragging you. Otherwise I would just be doing this back and forth, which would be really fun, but not very cool looking. So it was really hard. And so all the videos, I'm like, I love seeing that as here's where I started. And I, got much more comfortable and it got a lot easier. And I found my way through it. But I see those videos and I'm like, oof, girl, she was working hard. She was working hard. And it shows and sounds like it. But, that's the beautiful thing about theater, right? You get to perfect it and do it. I never got bored of doing it. I never got tired. I was learning things constantly. It's the longest I've done a show, like a run of a show. And yeah, I was like, am I going to get so sick of being a Disney princess for a year? And I was like, no, I found so many more interesting things about her and, wanted to dig deeper. So it wasn't just, Vaseline on the teeth, sort of smiling through the whole thing. It's just like, no, she's an individual who doesn't feel like she fits in her environment and no one understands her. And she tries to figure out where she does belong. And I think that's something that's so relatable to people of all ages and races and, identities. So I was like, this is actually a very important message if we don't let it just be about like fun and glitter and, sparkles and bubbles. So it was a really fun challenge to do for a year.
Absolutely. I can imagine that it was life-changing,
It was.
And I can feel you totally on that, like building up your endurance, because when I first started in The Lion King, I had to get adjusted to the corset and the weight of the corset and how constrictive it can be around the diaphragm. And I got used to it. But if someone had been capturing my first few rehearsals or even my first few performances with video, I would not want to see that. Like, I do not need to be reminded of that
how hard it was
at all. And I got so used to my endurance and getting used to the show that when I went on vacation once for 2 months, not for 2 months, for 2 weeks, I went on a 2-week vacation. 2 months, yeah. I went on a 2-week vacation. And I did not work out at all. And I thought that I could just come back and jump into my show. And that first show,
you like fall over.
Oh my God, I probably sounded like a drowning pig. Like, it was awful. It was terrible. So I feel you. I feel you on so many levels.
But then isn't it so fun to be like, man, I was that strong. To make something that difficult, that you take 2 weeks off of something that's so ingrained in your body like that. Like, oh, it's like riding a bike. I'll just get back on and ride my bike. And it's like, absolutely not. Your body is like, no, absolutely not. It's crazy. But then to think, when you are doing it and you're in the run of your show and it becomes easy, like, so much power. It's really, I was like, wow, anytime we took like a week off or something, and then I would come back and I was like, whoo, whoo, oh my gosh, I can't breathe. How do I breathe? How do I sing? I'm hanging from my seat. How do I do this? And then it gets fun again. You're like, I'm strong. I can do anything. I can do musical theater. Take that, bodybuilders.
Did you find that I'm curious, where did you audition for it? Because I know you're from Seattle. Had you already moved to New York, and did you audition in New York?
I had already moved to New York. I'd been in New York for like 4 or 5 years maybe. And I had done a reading for a new musical with the director Glenn, and he doing that show, he was like, oh, and he had already been working on Mermaid. He had done a couple of like mini tours in a paper mill playhouse, and they were still working on it. And he was like, I see like an Ariel in her. So he kind of like ticked that away in the back of his mind. And so when The Little Mermaid came up, they had auditions in Seattle because it started in Seattle with the Fifth Avenue Theater as the first producing company for the first half of tour. And it was going to be running in Seattle for a month over their Christmas season. So they were like, well, we don't want to just have a whole like New York cast come in because, a lot of Seattle pride, and Seattle has so much talent. And they were like, we want to keep some Seattle faces and names in these title roles. We don't want to have, someone that our audiences don't know come in for this. And Glenn was like, wait a minute, I know someone from Seattle. There's this girl that I met in New York named Diana Huey. And they're like, Diana, we know Diana. I'd worked there a ton and when I lived in Seattle, and so they had me do an audition in New York, and I went to, Ripley or Pearl or something. And I remember, it's so embarrassing. I remember standing at the door waiting to go in, and the monitor at the audition, I kind of cracked the joke of like, well, I'm not going to book this. Like, I'm not going to get cast as Ariel because maybe if it was just a sit down production, but I was like, they're not going to want to take an Asian girl and throw her around the whole country for a year on tour. They're not going to do that. And he was like, why not? Like, she's a mermaid. Why does it matter? And I was like, oh, right. Okay. Thank you. Okay, good. But I was just excited to go into a room and sing Part of Your World, a song that, every kid in our age group grew up singing and, just pretended to be Ariel. And I was like, I get to do this for 3 minutes. For 3 minutes, I get to be Ariel. And they have to at least hopefully pretend to watch. Hopefully it's not one of those auditions where they're like,
eating a sandwich.
Yeah, just doing their Sudoku. And you're like, oh, should I go? So yeah, I did the audition, and then I got a call like a week later. And it was, I was in like a downstairs basement changing room of maybe like a Rainbow like clothing store, like, like a cheap kind of discount shopping thing where I was like, well, I'm in Midtown, so let me just see if they can get a new tank top or so. I don't know, and I'm like in this basement, so I didn't get service, and so I get this voicemail from my agent saying that I booked it, and I'm like, standing with no pants on or something, like in this basement changing room in New York. And I was just like, wow, I'm all alone in this basement and I can't tell anybody that my life I just booked my dream job. I can't believe it. But so the audition was in New York, but it definitely had strong ties to being from Seattle. So I was very, very lucky to be able to tick those boxes. And I was, and then I got to go home for Christmas and the holidays, and it was amazing. And a lot of the ensemble and a lot of the cast was made up of Seattle people. So I got to, be reunited with my original Seattle tribe and the people that I fell in love with theater with. So it was really special.
That is so awesome that you got to
Yeah.
do what you said, your dream role, and then you're in your hometown and your family gets to be there. You get to be supported the entire time, which is amazing. It doesn't always happen that way.
I know. I had I had someone come to every single show for that like month sit down in Seattle. People that I hadn't seen in decades, like, friends from childhood that I hadn't seen. And, they're like, I'm coming to see you in The Little Mermaid, or people at the stage door. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I remember you from, was it fifth grade? Like, it's like, what is happening? So I had someone at every single show. There were lots of backstage tours, and lots of, I had to do the stage door, to see people every single show. It was amazing. I was like, this is the most incredible homecoming that I could ever ask for.
That is so awesome. I can actually when you mentioned that you were like, they're not gonna cast me, I've experienced that feeling too. I've been called into auditions and thought, why am I here? Really though, why am I here?
Right.
And I don't know if it's a mixture of what society tells us or just our personal experiences have taught us that it usually
Mhm.
goes to a white girl or a person that a non-melanated person. And so it's sometimes you're already shooting yourself in the foot before you get in the room, and maybe you just
Yeah.
want to enjoy the audition and you just want to sing this lovely song from your childhood, but in the back of your mind, you're thinking maybe you're wasting your time.
Yeah.
I hate that. And I don't know what we can do to start changing that mindset. I know that casting needs to change so that we
Yes.
can feel and that the young girls and guys and girls coming after us can feel like their efforts are not in vain.
Yes.
I was doing a Q&A with Broadway Plus recently,
Hmm.
and there was this young actor on named Roman Banks, and he was the first black Evan Hansen, and
Oh.
he got into the show as one of the covers, and then went on, and he became the first black actor to ever perform that role. And he talked about when the show came out, and he's young, like he left college to do this role.
Oh my
So
goodness.
when he first heard about Dear Evan Hansen in high school, which makes me laugh because anyway, but it's cute and it's fun. But he first heard about Dear Evan Hansen, and he talks about how he connected so much with Evan. He said, I'm an Evan. I'm an Evan.
Mm.
And when he went to the open call, there were only 5 people of color in line for Evan because it could be the voice part, but I think it has to do with you just already make the decision, I'm not going to book this role. Why should I even try?
Why should
And
I be here? Yeah.
I felt so hopeful seeing that he didn't let that hold him back and that he went in with his sights on what he thought was the best role for him.
Yeah. I mean, after having the experience that I had and then facing all of the racism that I faced from people just touring and about being Asian and playing Ariel, and then I think back, I thought, well, I did it too. I did it first. I was the first one to say I can't, Asian, like I was the first one to do it, and I did it to myself. And I it really was like an eye-opening experience for me of, you know, I can't fault anyone else for saying it if I said it about myself. So I need to change my own dialogue and how I approach an audition or how I approach these opportunities or how I approach a role, um, and not, categorize myself like that. And, I hope that I can continue to practice that lesson and like continue learning from that and do and like show up for that call that you're like, why am I here? And hope that, it's because you're here, like because I am here, not because of what I look like, but because of who I am and what I can do and what I bring to this role. Um, and so hopefully, I mean, that's, the dream, right? That is how things start going when we all get back. I think this has been a very thought-provoking year, and there's been a lot of like very needed discussion and reevaluation. So I do hope that when we get back into it, that this will be a thing of more of the past, and people will be like, wait, why would you not go to an audition, like, because of the color of your skin, like, but you can sing it, or you could act it, or you can dance it, or whatever it is, why would you not go? Did you want it? You wanted it? Why didn't you go? And it's like, well, so I hope that becomes like the conversation of the past, like, oh, I walked uphill both ways in the snow when I was your age going to school, like, I want it to be that conversation where people are like, yeah, we know, but it doesn't apply anymore. So that's the hope. And that's so great that he, did that, because it's also so, I'm sure too, that feeling when you walk into an audition for a role that is typically white, cast as white, and you show up and you're like, what's up? I am the only person here that isn't what the cookie cutter, what you would assume the character to look like. And it's incredibly intimidating. Or if there's like the, 5 people in a huge call like that, it's like you feel very, very naked and very seen. And then if you don't do it perfectly, if you're not like 110% perfect for this, and you give not a great audition, it's so much more embarrassing, and like so much more, it just feels it's horrible, right? I had that experience where I didn't do so well in a callback in like the dance call, and it was me and a bunch of white girls, and the breakdown for the character described her to be white basically 3 different ways in that one little paragraph. And I was like, I was like asking my agents, like, should I go in for this? Because I just don't want, if they're not going to look at me, if they want her to be a blonde-haired, blue-eyed Midwestern girl, great, but I'm not that. So if that's what they want, then that's not what I'm going to give them. So should I be going? And they're like, oh, I didn't even notice that. That's old language. It's old, like, yeah. And, it's fine. It's fine. So just go in, and, they meant to update that or something. So I was like, okay. And then it stayed that way the whole time. And then I get to the call, and I'm the only, 5-foot Asian girl with these beautiful dancers. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like the actor, like the nightmare that I have. And I wake up in a sweat, and I'm living it. And then, so it's so hard to get through that. And then when I didn't do the combination perfectly, it was just like, so why is that one here? Like, what is she doing here? I thought she must obviously have been like really ferocious, but I was like,
and then
like
the other fear, the other fear too, is that you're misrepresenting everyone else that looks like you,
right?
As if that's on your shoulders to represent yourself so well that next time they'll call more of us in. And I can't take that on, even though I do.
We do. It's, it's been such an interesting year. And I was in this workshop for a new musical, and they started it with a diversity, like inclusion and anti-racism workshop. And they were like, it's not mandatory. And I think most everyone showed up. And there were just so many interesting things that they were even talking about how, we as the hierarchy, we as the actors are like at the bottom of the totem pole.
Absolutely.
Like the dirt holding the totem pole in the ground, right? Like we feel so powerless to say no, or to, call something out, or to say anything other than like, yes, and just yes, and through all of it. Right. And that's something that, at least in this diversity workshop, they were really talking about, like moving forward in theater processes, and how this is going to be like a conversation that happens at the first day of every rehearsal, and the just sort of reallocating where the power lies so that it's more communal and like a team And I'm hoping that, because it's so much to take on to be like, oh, well, if I'm the only Asian girl and then I mess up, then they're going to be like, oh yeah, we took a risk. We were like, oh, let's see if maybe we can add in a little bit of, so let's just stick with what we do. And it's like, I am not the representative of every person on this planet. You know, so hopefully, yeah, we can speak up. And I wish that I never know how it works in an audition, but I wanted to just go up to them and say, I'm incredibly nervous and I just botched that, and I know I botched that, and I know I can do it. It's that hard line where you don't want to sound like you're begging, but I was so mad at myself because I was like, I could do that combination. I just got so in my head with everything, and I felt defeated the second I walked in before I even did anything. I just looked around and I went, oh crap, So man, I hope that there is the sort of thing where you can go up and talk to the creatives and say, I gave you that was my that was my dance call. And here, and I don't know, when you just want to say like, I can do better.
Yeah.
I can. And I don't know if it's like the most appropriate thing to go up to someone and be like, I can do better, I promise. You don't want to go into an audition and be like, I have a cold. And so if I mess up, that's why, you don't ever do that. But man, there are just those times where I wish that we felt like we could have open communication with people. Aren't we all like, we're applying to work together. And so why shouldn't I be able to then communicate with you my truth? Like, hey, that wasn't the best, but I do know I could do it. And I know that I take an extra day, but if this were rehearsal and I got to go home and think on this for a second and do it in my own time, not with the pressure of 5, 6, 7, 8, go, I can do it. I could do it.
I know that
so
too.
Hard.
Austin talks a lot because Austin, my husband, he sits on the other side of the table quite a lot, and as a music director, and he says that they always choose the hardest bits, or just to put the pressure cooker on people, just to see if they can handle it, and see if if push comes to shove and this actor does handle it well. Great, but maybe they don't. And how do they handle those mess ups, or how do they handle the pressure, and are they going to be good to work with? And I think that's the fear, that if you do say that I have a cold, they're going to be like, oh my God, they're difficult.
Excuses.
Or or excuses.
Yeah.
And you just have that small window to make an impression. And you just want it to be the best parts of yourself. I have gone into auditions and cursed by accident. And, and then I swear to you, that casting director didn't call me in for 5 years.
Are you kidding?
No, not
kidding. Okay, but also, like, maybe if you were cursing at them, but in what world in the theater, is it not everyday conversation where it's a colorful room, it's always,
room. It is.
I'm just like, that's garbage. That's garbage. I'm like, that it's not like you were applying to, work at a church or work with children.
Right.
It's like, I'm auditioning for a musical or for a theater. And
yeah, I think maybe she might have been a bit of a prude, but it's okay. It's fine. I'm fine.
Oh man, that's horrible. I would be in some, I don't know. It's hard. It just gets ingrained. It is the language of, of the business. It's very
very expressive, very colorful,
very
expressive, and honest.
Yes. Yeah. And honest.
Yeah. I don't even remember why I cursed, but in the moment it felt right. And then afterwards I kept overthinking it. And then of course, when I didn't get called in ever again, I thought, oh, okay. Yeah, that's what happened. All right, moving on. But you know what? I don't know. I think when I was thinking about what you said about, should we say something? I don't know. If we had an insight into the casting director's brain, then we would know. And I would love that. Like if I had time to intern at a casting office, and if they had time for me to be there, I would do it, because you could learn so much about why they operate the way they do. I imagine that they're constantly busy, and that's why everything's so last minute a little clipped and everything. And when you luck
Yeah.
out with a casting director who's actually really kind and gracious and gives you a moment and everything, it's really lovely. But I imagine because the culture of it seems to be very last minute and somewhat difficult, I think that they must be very busy.
Yeah.
I just want to intern so that I can understand what's happening. The closest I got was being a reader, but even still, like I still don't know.
That's what I was wondering.
Yeah.
I've had friends that have like, they're like, oh man, just sitting in the room when you leave and the door shuts, they were like, I learned a lot, and I'm very curious about that. Did you like hear a lot of things? Did you get the inside scoop?
So I was in a few rooms where they asked me to leave after every oh my gosh, I'm forgetting words, actor. After every actor left. But what I learned was that how someone enters a room is really important. And making eye contact, and even the simplest things like if casting introduces everyone behind the table, like really take a moment and take that in. And those are things that I didn't do. I would go in, I'm ready and I'm focused, and I'm not really being a human being. And what was interesting being a reader is you see people walk in over and over and over again. And you can tell within seconds who's confident, who's self-assured, who's ready, who's going to, be easy to work with. You can kind of tell. And with one director, he told me, he said, he let me ask him questions. I can't believe he let me do that. But I got to ask him questions in between people. And he said, I know within 10 seconds if I want to work with someone. Now, his casting process is a little different. He's very precise about who he'll work with. And then because they're already in the room, he's decided that they know how to do their craft because they're called in the room. But he looks for, who do I want to work with? Who do I want to who do I want to sit and have coffee with? That's what he cares about. But
that's what I tell like any students that I talk to. I'm like, everyone is talented. Everyone has something to bring to the table. So you have to just be your best self, be kind to everyone, acknowledge everyone, know everyone, because that's what's going to get you working.
Yes.
If people want to work with you, because we get to play, and you don't want to play with someone you don't like. You don't want to play with someone that's a jerk. You want to. So I'm like, kids, be nice to everybody.
Yes.
Treat people the way you want to be treated. It's like, it all goes back to kindergarten. Like, if we could just treat people the way we want to be treated. Would you like it if someone did this to you? No? Then okay, then don't do it to them.
Mm-hmm. It's that simple. We forget it though, especially in an environment that is so competitive. Because just because it's competitive, it doesn't mean it has to get nasty or unkind. But it can be. It's not always, but it can be. And, it's livelihoods and reputations at stake. And, I just want that next notch in my career. We can get very focused on that and lose sight of just, hey, these are my fellow actors. They're going through the same thing I'm going through. How can I support you in this audition waiting room?
Yeah. Yep.
I have been in some waiting rooms where the dancers are stretching and the singers are humming, and I am just like, uncomfortable.
Help! Can we all just be friends?
Yeah.
Like, if we all book this together, we're all going to be best friends. So let's start now. Like, you immediately become friends with, like, is it like, now we all got a gold star. We all got an A, so we can all be like, I can acknowledge you now because we are the same. Like, what is it? But I hate that energy. I hate it when it's like that. Nothing makes me feel better than when I'm at an audition and everyone is just, kind, and we're all getting along and sharing things, passing pages or whatever it is, or just being nice to each other. It's so helpful. I've made friends from auditions where people are like, oh, how do you guys know each other? And we're like, Pearl, like the hallway. I don't know. We've like never worked together. We just see each other at auditions and we've become friends. And I'm like, that's the way it should be. We're all trying to do the same thing. We're all, trying to make art. We're trying to have fun and tell stories. And, it's not like we're, I don't know.
No, it's true. And
It's
we're all, like
be
you
nice.
said, at the bottom, we're all the dirt that the totem pole is in, And so we're very replaceable. And so we might as well treat each other with kindness because the rest of this community can be difficult. It can be challenging. So we might as well be
Yeah.
kind to each other, all of us at bottom dwellers down here.
But it's so true. Isn't it like so much nicer to enjoy yourself at the audition versus being like stressed out and miserable and, like that New York, when you're walking and you just immediately like mean mug and you stare down at the ground, you walk as fast as you can, even though you're like, I'm killing an hour, but I'm going to still walk as fast as I can down the street. And like, gosh, what a miserable way to live, right? I'm like, why not take this opportunity to hang out with people and have fun and talk and learn and crack a joke and then maybe go get a coffee and walk to the train together. It's like I don't know. I've had a lot of I don't know, the Asian American musical theater community in particular is very super like supportive and wonderful, and like you get to, it's like once you do one Miss Saigon, everyone, and or it's at least 1 degree of separation. And so at least when I get those calls where there's a lot of Asian people or like diversity calls, which but I'm like, well, at least I'm gonna go see all my friends today. Bye. Like going to the audition, I'm gonna go hang out with people, and then we're gonna go get barbecue. It's like I don't know. I just think it's so much better. And it makes it so then you walk into the room and you're not coming from this position, but you're like coming from
and up,
just
and high,
chatting and having fun, and being like, oh, right, this is fun. This is fun. Theater is fun. And like working with other artists is fun. And connecting with people is fun. This is what I like to do.
Absolutely. I'm curious too, when you had that experience of being the only Asian girl in this dance call, I've experienced where I'm the only Black girl in the audition room. And I think sometimes colorism comes into play in my head too, because I'm thinking, well, they may cast a Black girl, but she's not going to be this shade, or, and that's troubling because I don't want to feel this competitive nature with my other Black fellow actresses.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that I feel competitive, but I am aware that colorism plays a role. And I'm aware of that if they want to diversify a cast, that they go for what they can see. So maybe even if I'm in the audition room with a few light-skinned Black girls, they may choose someone my shade just because from the back of the house you can tell, oh, there's a Black girl on stage, which isn't fair. And we just have a long way to go. But have you, in your experience, even in Seattle or New York or DC, where you've auditioned and worked, have you found that you've had to take on the quote unquote token role in a show?
I mean, yeah, especially at the beginning, I feel more, I was thinking through this, and I've been relatively lucky, and because especially in the beginning, because I am 5 feet tall, and because I am Asian, and because I am definitely a stronger singer, actor versus dancer. Not to just out myself. I will work very hard and I will get it. But
Adrian and I hope that you have enjoyed listening to the show thus far. If you'd like to hear the full interview and get access to the curtain call, head on over to 32barcut.com, where you can find a link to our Patreon page. There you will have exclusive access to the entire video collection and private RSS podcast feed, as well as other subscriber-only content. All right, that's all I got. Thanks for tuning in. See you next time.